Hello, my name is Patty Van Antwerp, and I will be presenting the data dilemma today. After introductions, I will be addressing three main areas. I just want to make sure you're in the correct section. I will be addressing intervention, benchmarking and progress monitoring, and presenting student data. As I said, my name is Patty Van Antwerp. I retired in 2012 after 32 years in the elementary classroom and contracted back with Waterville Public Schools that same year as the lead interventionist at North Elementary, a 3 through 5 building. I schedule intervention at North, lead the intervention team, and provide intervention myself. When I use the terms Tier 2 and Tier 3, I am referring to the MTSS redesign pyramid by Mike Maddowes. At Tier 1, students are on grade level. At Tier 2, students receive extra support to meet grade level essentials. At Tier 3, students receive extensive remediation, usually below grade level. As a classroom teacher and as an interventionist, I grew frustrated by the difficulty I faced when trying to get special education services for a student. I felt I knew what the student needed and that my observations and concerns were not valued. I am sure you can relate. I observed teachers not referring students for testing due to the disqualification rate. I kept hearing the word data, and though I was providing data, it was not the data desired by the Barry and Risa team. I decided to work with Jamie Ely and Dee Dee Bohm from our Barry and Risa team at that time to learn exactly what data was expected. Then I worked to design a system that would benefit students and at the same time provide data to show Tier 3 interventions and growth or lack thereof. So here is my disclaimer. I am not a data expert. I am presenting what has worked for me at North. I have proof that it has worked because each student brought up for testing using this system has qualified for special education services. I was asked to present today, and I am happy to do it. But an expert, I am not. The data I have collected has been for reading and math. I have worked with classroom teachers regarding behavior data and will address that briefly at the end of the presentation. For reading at North, Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction is assigned to the classroom teacher. Students in need of Tier 3 instruction are pulled for Fontes and Pinnell during a time when grade level essential skills are not being taught. Fontes and Pinnell itself is a research-based intervention. Receiving small group instruction is also a research-based intervention. When students are not showing growth in Fontes and Pinnell groups or on their NWEA, we assess them further using the Ames-Webb Maze benchmark for comprehension and the Ames-Webb oral reading fluency benchmark. When students are not at grade level on the oral reading fluency benchmark, we assess them further to determine whether the difficulty may be due to lack of phonics knowledge or lack of sight word knowledge. We do this using the core phonics benchmark and the Fontes and Pinnell sight word benchmark. While I am mentioning Ames-Webb, I would like to explain further that this measure is the choice of the Barry and Risa staff. Non-special education teachers cannot use the computerized version, but the special education teacher in your building can print off all of the benchmark tests, probes, administration guidelines, and norms. In math at North, teachers take the lead for Tiers 1 and 2. However, at Tier 2, teachers have the support of an interventionist who comes to their room for 50 minutes a day to provide additional support to students in need. Many teachers use a center rotation at this time so that students can receive small group instruction at their level. When students are flagged by the NWEA or teacher observation as being at risk, further assessment is done using the Ames-Webb MCAT for concepts and application and the Ames-Webb MComp for computation. Once students are identified as needing Tier 3 instruction in reading or math, I design an intervention program for them, and the documentation begins. Each student has an intervention notebook for a given subject. Within that notebook are the intervention records, followed by progress monitoring data, probes, and interventionist notes. In the front of the notebook is this form. Interventions are recorded. When a particular intervention is changed or another is added, that too is noted. Next are the progress monitoring pieces. Progress monitoring takes place every 1 to 2 weeks and is in the form of a short assessment. Those in Ames-Webb are referred to as probes. Data from the progress monitoring is then graphed so that student growth can be easily tracked. For example, on the left you see a record of intervention for math computation and concepts and applications. The student began in the classroom with Tier 2 small group intervention. During intervention, the student was assigned a seat by the instructor. Tier 3 targeted instruction was added later in September. The interventionist added different research-based interventions and strategies as the year went on. This fall, the student will come up for evaluation for special education. On the right is a record of reading interventions. The student received small group instruction with Fontes and Pinnell. A reading mentor from the community was added to give one-on-one reading support. The student was found through the core phonics benchmark to lack phonics skills and was placed into West Virginia Phonics, a free online program. A number of interventions were later added as the year went on. Basically, you can see that an intervention is tried. If it is successful and progress monitoring shows sufficient growth, the intervention is continued. If there is not sufficient growth, further interventions are added or the intervention is changed in some way. For example, the ratio of students to teacher could be lowered. The length of time with the interventionist could be lengthened. The interventionist could also be changed, perhaps to provide an interventionist who speaks Spanish to an ELL student. Now we will take a look at a sample packet of data that I would present at a READ meeting. I always bring NWEA data to show lack of progress over time. Then I present the lists of interventions as well as the progress monitoring graphs. This was a third grade student being progress monitored at second grade level. I also include data from other sources. In the past, our at-risk students were progress monitored monthly using Study Island. Then we tried the Front Row program, now known as Freckle. This year, we will just use NWEA data and teacher observation. Here again is the list of interventions for reading. That is followed by the graph of reading fluency progress at grade 2. Note the decline in scores starting in December. For this reason, the interventionist began to progress monitor at grade 1. Here is the graph of reading comprehension at grade 2 as measured by the Ames-Webb maze. Overall, you can see the lack of progress despite all of our interventions. This is our basis for requesting testing. Another piece of data that the Berry and Risa staff like to see is the child's progress in relation to others receiving the same intervention. This graph shows the progress of a reading group of 3 who were together in our lowest group in the fall. The student of concern, shown in red, made some progress, but remained significantly below grade level, as shown in the green, while the other students reached grade level. If your students do reading counts or a similar program, that graph is also helpful. Here, the grade range is compared to the student who remained beginning reader. I have spoken about reading and math data today because that is my focus at North. I want to be sure you know that there is an Ames-Webb written expression progress monitoring tool too. I have also worked with teachers when they collected data on behavior. Again, the interventions have to be listed and added to or changed. The most effective behavioral interventions seem to include a student contract where students earn points and have options as to what to spend those points on. One teacher I worked with had a few expectations listed and graphed the percent of time the student met those expectations each day as compared to a class-based expectation of 80%. If you want more information in that area, I would be happy to try to help you. At this time, I would like to answer questions you may have.